video is very kindly sponsored by Sol Digital. Hello everybody, hope you're all well. If you can hear some noises that you don't usually hear while I'm filming in this room, I do apologise. I've had to open the windows today because it is boiling, so if you hear sheep or ambulances or God knows what else, my apologies. Guitars. You might not hear those, I don't think, but guitars is something I want to talk about today. James, what are you on about? This is a photography channel, but guitars are, I think, quite easy to play, but they're difficult to play well. What are some other things that are like that? Chopsticks, easy to use. It's actually not that common here. That is just coincidence. I think zoom lenses, so back to photography, zoom lenses are much like guitars and chopsticks in that regard. Easy to use, difficult to use well. So it's kind of what this video is about. Now, last week I was in Croatia on holiday with Emily. I was on the island of Brač and in a tiny little town called Bol. And it was lovely to be there, really, really nice. Didn't get loads of photography done because it was a south-facing town and there were mountains to the north, which meant that you didn't really get much of the really nice light. But I did get out a couple of times and I will intersperse bits of this video with some footage and photos from that trip, in the hope that I don't just bore you talking for 10 minutes or however long this takes. Okay, so zoom lenses. These were created basically, I think, to make a photographer's life easier. Less lens changes, so less missed shots because you were changing lenses at the wrong time. Less weight than sort of 3 or 4 different primes, and ultimately just more options. You know, you might have had a 24, 35, a 50 and a 70 previously, but now with a 24 to 70, you've also got all the gaps between those covered in one simple lens. When I say simple lens, I'm sure it's anything but. Right, I'm going to close that window. Prefer to melt than hear a strimmer out there.
Right. In the conversation of zooms versus primes, it often doesn't take long for the phrase zooming with your feet to come out the woodwork. But that is a phrase which is problematic, and I'll now demonstrate that here, which is not a particularly pretty place, but it's useful for the purposes of this. So let's say I want a shot, I mean I don't, but let's say I want a shot of this scene here with the billboard and the top of the mountain in the background. Now, let's assume, having shot at 35mm, that I then want something a bit tighter. With a zoom, I've got 2 options. I can either zoom in a bit, so let's shoot maybe at, I don't know, 45mm, get this nice taxi in the shot too. What a beautiful image. So yeah, I can either do that or I can take a few steps forward, but watch the mountain as I do that. So I think that was 5 steps and the mountain has disappeared. And now it doesn't matter what focal length I use, I won't get the same composition. There is no mountain there. So zooming with your feet can work really well. But in scenes where you've got depth, where you've got things at different distances, you won't get the same result zooming as you will zooming with your feet. So that's an important thing to keep in mind.
Now, people used to say of zoom lenses that the image quality wasn't very good, certainly compared to primes. But this 24-70 GM2 from Sony is absolutely fantastic. It's one of many fantastic zoom lenses now, which make it very difficult to tell the difference between a zoom and a prime. I certainly can't tell the difference between this and lots of the primes that I've tested, and if you can, you've got better eyesight than me, or more time, or both. But even so, even with lenses as fantastic as this, I, as I've spoken about before on this channel, have a love-hate relationship with zooms, because on the one hand, it does definitely make my life easier. On the other, it muddies the waters of my process and my engagement in taking photos. And I think of this in the same terms that I think of a padlock on a suitcase. And I'm thinking of that because I've just got back from holiday. Again, bear with me. So my suitcase has got a 3-digit code that you need to get right to unlock it. And on those 3 wheels, the numbers run from 0 to 9, which, if my maths is right, suggests that there are 999 different options. Now, if we were to add one more wheel, and therefore we were going to need a 4-digit combination to open the suitcase, we'd be increasing the number of wheels by 33%, I suppose. But we increase the number of options by a lot more than that. We increase the number of options tenfold, because now we've got 9,999 different combinations that could open the suitcase. Where am I going with this? Oh yeah, so zooms I think are much the same. For instance, if you've got a 50mm prime and you swap it out for this 24 to 70, you'll then have 45 different focal lengths to choose from, on top of what you'd have had if you had one focal length to choose from. And obviously that's just assuming that you only use the round numbers, such as 45mm, 46mm, 47mm, and not the in-between half. Yeah, lots of different options basically. But you actually have many more than that, because when you're using a prime, you don't just have one option of what to shoot or where to shoot from. You can move with your feet, you can change the height of your body, you can change the orientation of the camera. You have loads of options with a prime. And with a zoom, you have all those options, but also 45 other options with this to change your focal length as well. And of course, I say 45, 46 options if you are using a 24 to 70, but if you're using a 100 to 400, that's 300 different focal lengths, assuming you stick to exact millimeters. Although the difference between 399 and 400 millimeters is not as big as the difference between 24 and 25 millimeters. Doesn't matter. Point is, with a prime, you have lots of different options for what photos you can pose and how you can pose them. With a zoom, you multiply that by... it's maths I can't even do. So that being the case, it's really no wonder that the advice to beginner photographers so often is get yourself a 50 and learn to live with and love the constraints of a single focal length before you start worrying about using lots of different focal lengths. But the more I think about that, the more I realise that A, you don't need a prime to constrain yourself to a single focal length. You can absolutely use a zoom for that. And B, that isn't just advice that beginners should listen to. I think most photographers, including myself, could benefit from thinking like that. And indeed, that's what I do these days. And I've spoken about this a little bit before on the channel, but when I use a zoom now, I use it primarily as a prime. And so for me, I'll select something like 40mm, 50mm, and I'll go around wherever I am hunting for compositions at that focal length. And only when it becomes apparent that I can't get the shot I want by walking backwards into the middle of a busy road or crouching down so that I melt into a pavement, if it becomes obvious that at 40mm or 50mm I can't get the shot that I want, only then will I consider zooming either in or out. And so for me, the zoom functionality of any lens is really more of a fail-safe or a utility tool than anything else. I'm using it very rarely. And ultimately, I feel like if you're using zooms and you're struggling with zooms, I think you should give it a try. I find it more simple, more freeing, more engaging, less frantic, and ultimately, I think at least, I end up with better results. Now, of course, that might not be the case for you. You might be the sort of photographer who can decide between 24mm low down in portrait mode or 50mm jumping in landscape orientation. And you might be able to do that calculation in the blink of an eye. I can't, to be honest, and so I find that I'm better off shooting at, say, 50mm, and if after 2 minutes I can't find the shot I want, dialing it back to 35 for the sake of argument. Sort of stops some of the mayhem in my head. Anyway, hopefully that was interesting or useful, and hopefully you enjoyed some of the photos I've got in Croatia. I love this one of the boat and the fuel station for the boats. I think that looks really nice. What a morning. Oh, also, I need to pick a winner for the giveaway print that it's a photo that I shot in Italy on my phone quite a while back now. And it's a print made by Sol Digital. Fantastic looking thing. And I'm giving it away. And I mentioned in a previous video that I would be giving it away to the most voted for comment. And well, let's see what it is. Great to see that James is never too afraid to speak his mind, even when that means blaming others for his unhealthy food choices. Yep, fair enough.
I have thought of something negative about Rich, which is your restrained food choices.
Yeah.
So, some dude 8604, you have won the print. Congratulations. And a big thank you to the sponsor of today's video, Sol Digital, for making such fantastic looking prints. Also, as you may remember from some previous videos, they don't just make prints, they make fantastic looking photo books. And these are handmade with an acrylic cover. They've got a fantastic lay flat binding. There's no logo anywhere either, so fantastic looking products. And actually, I'm going to give one of these away as well. This is one from Iceland, our trip to Iceland, family trip to Iceland that I put together and talked about a lot in a previous video. But I'm going to make a different one of these that isn't Iceland trip specific, because I'm at the very early stages of doing the sequencing for my next book called Human Nature, and I found that Sol Digital's software for sequencing and putting together these books is absolutely fantastic. So I'm using that software for the sequencing, and I'm going to put together some of my favourite images that I've ever taken into one of these books, and then I'm going to give it away in a future video. So again, top comment in about a month's time on this video will win that book, and it'll be pretty special because it'll be one of one. There'll only ever be one made. So if you fancy that, leave a comment mocking me or otherwise, and you may be in with a chance of winning that one of one book. But yes, thank you so much to Sol Digital for sponsoring this video and making such fantastic products. And again, congratulations to some dude 8604. And this will be in the post on its way to you. Hope you've got a big post box.